Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to speak to Candyce Edelen. And Candyce is I hope it's okay that I dubbed you the queen of conversational prospecting, Candyce.
Aw, thanks.
I just felt that based on what you told me, that this moniker is absolutely warranted. Because wait, let me just, before I'm just giving it all away here, let me just first introduce you. So Candyce is it okay to call you a LinkedIn coach? Are you
Yeah,
okay with that?
we're a trainer. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And who do you work with?
I work with B2B salespeople and small business owners that are generally, most of them are in technology, some business coaches, and help them to find prospects on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And you are clearly excellent at it based on, so we just got talking because I think it was you sent me like one of your magical messages. And I instantly, of course, had to respond because you are so good at it. And then we started talking and you told me that you have some really incredible numbers based on, yeah, basically you start many conversations and then you get certain amount of people on Zoom or on the phone, and then you actually close them. So that was just fascinating to me how you do it, because I do this myself. I have quite a bit of experience in this. Overall, I think I started some 2,000 conversations. But where I think you and I differ, and I would love to discuss this, where you and I differ is the style of the conversation that we conduct until the point where the person agrees to have a call.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So maybe what would be a good idea if we first present your numbers and then we can talk about your approach and how you actually get new people on the phone. Is that all right?
Sure. And
Excellent.
just to clarify, the numbers you're going to be showing are not my numbers. Those are numbers of people I've trained. We did a 90-day accelerator in January. So it's 90 days. So it went from late January to early April. And there were 10 people in it in a lot of different companies, different kinds of products and services that they were selling. These are their numbers.
Yeah. So presumably your numbers are even better because you train this and you're very good at it.
Yeah, I get really good numbers.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So let's look at this. And I've sort of, these are your actual numbers that you shared with me. And these are, I then standardized them to an index of 100 here, right? So 100 connection requests you send and you get an accept rate of 41%. You said they used to be better, but these days it's decreasing because of, there's more and more spam on LinkedIn. So 40% is still a great number, right? In terms of
yeah, my connection acceptance rate is significantly higher than that. Although I haven't pulled my numbers to go, I should actually calculate that for this year. It's definitely gone down. I used to get a 76% connection acceptance rate, and I think mine is probably in the 65-ish% now. This is a group of people who were pretty new to doing outreach on LinkedIn, and so they had a learning curve. Yep. And this is their numbers over the full 90 days. So they were getting progressively better as we went through the 90 days. But yeah, so they put out 424 connection request. You know what? That's a little, yeah, I think they got 424 new connections. And then they invited 188 of them to meet with them via DMs on LinkedIn.
Okay, so this number needs to be huge. It's 424 accepted, and out of those, they presumably started the conversation with most of them, because after all, they are in their target market. They started the conversation.
Sometimes they would connect with people that had a large network, were influencers, because they wanted to engage more with the influencers. So that's why we have that number. Is they don't invite everybody, and not everybody engages over DM. We're going to track that ratio this time around. We're starting another accelerator next week, and we'll track the number of engaged connections too, because I'd like to see what that metric looks like.
Are there still open spots for that accelerator starting next week?
There are. Yeah, we've got a couple of open seats left, so if somebody's interested, yeah, I mean, well, let's keep going through these numbers, because
where absolutely, that's what we want to do.
That's
but
where the magic is.
That's what matters. But I do want to alert people, and I have nothing to gain from this. But if you are interested in how Candyce does it, then sign up to her accelerator starting next week. I'm sure you know how to contact her. So
thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
424 accepted. So these, we put them in this line. And then 108, some of the conversations progressed to a point where your students were confident to propose a meeting to 188 of those people.
Right.
Okay. Out of those, 102 accepted. And
actually, that number went up. It was 108 at the end. So I probably sent that to you before we got our final numbers.
Yep. Good. 108. Then out of this, 55 qualified opportunities. Probably now a tiny bit more if the 108. If the 108.
Yeah, actually, there's one intermediate metric there. So I don't know that you need to necessarily change your math there, but we had 88 meetings that were actually held. So what I find is that the rate of show up for those meetings is really high. But not all of the meetings had actually been held yet by the time the accelerator ended. So there were 88 meetings actually held during the time of the accelerator, and 55 of those converted into opportunities.
Oh, okay, good. So meetings. Okay, but so what is this? Oh, these were meeting bookings.
108 booked, 88 held, 55 qualified opportunities. Sorry, I'm messing up your math.
No worries, no worries. So these are meetings booked, and then these are meetings held. So this is the difference between 108 and 88 is the show up rate.
Right. Show up rate and so some of those meetings got booked in the last week of the accelerator. So they just hadn't happened yet.
Yeah. No, it's perfectly understandable. So, but I know, show up rate, this is a decent show up rate. It's like an 80% show up rate. That's pretty standard.
Yeah, we actually typically get even higher. I mean, it's usually around a 90%. So I know that some of those meetings happened.
Yeah.
So usually, and this is what's remarkable to me is that, between 80 and 90, for me, about 95% of the meetings show up. Now they might reschedule because stuff happens in their calendars, but they've got my Calendly link and they just take the action to reschedule. I don't have to chase them. They want to meet.
Good. Okay. And then, so out of those 55 qualified opportunities and 12 deals closed.
12 deals closed during the 90 days. Now, understand that most of the people in our accelerator had longer sales cycles than 90 days. And I haven't gone back to them to go ask which of the other deals closed, but I would expect that we probably had better than a 30% close rate on those.
Very impressive. And those are multi-thousand, multi-four, if not five-figure high-ticket deals, I presume, right? Those are not
mostly 5 and 6 figure. So I don't think any 7-figure deals were in the pipeline, but all of them were in the mid to high 5s to 6s.
Yeah. Okay. So the metric to me that really stands out here is the number of meetings actually booked.
Yep.
Because that is the impressive one. So if you, let's say for the sake of the argument that 424, you start 424 conversations, right? It was less than that. So let's say it was 400 and you book 100 meetings. So that's a 25% first message to meeting booking rate.
Yep.
That is the figure that fascinates me the most.
Yep.
Because could you explain what is your way, what is your philosophy? How do you get a complete stranger who might not be at all in the market for what you know, for what you are selling? What is your conversational style that you get with a quarter of them, you successfully invite them to a meeting?
That's the number one nugget, and I'm not going to tell you that because you have to take my class. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So what we do is personalize every connection request. And when I say personalize, I don't mean hi, first name at company. I see that you've been at your company for X number of years and use a bot to send that, or even just send the same message over and over again. We look for a nugget of information on that person's profile. We start, sometimes I can do it just from the headline, not always, but occasionally I can get a meeting just because they had a fun headline. the next place to go look is their profile, their about section, and look for something. They've written that about section, so it's important to them. So I look for a nugget that I could use for a conversation starter there. If I don't find that, then I look at their background. If I don't find that, then I Google them. You're going to pull up somebody's profile and we'll do this live?
My profile. You're going to show me a magic on me.
All right. Awesome. All right.
But yeah, so you look for a nugget.
Okay. So I work to make my clients extremely wealthy, helping consultants grow by 100K a year to begin with. All right. So this is a good example of where the headline alone has a solid way to start a conversation. Why don't you actually pull up our message? Let's see how I started the conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that there's quite a bit going on here. I often have that happen with people where we'll have long conversations via DM. So that was the case. You sent me the connection request.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize it was only a version. Okay, so you did not start a conversation with me. I started it with you. But if you now were to look at my profile, what would be the nugget? Is it okay if I close our conversation?
Yeah, I just want everybody to note here that we have a conversation going. So Michael mentioned John's book. And so I engaged in talking about John's book. And we engaged talking about John Asperian, who I have massive respect for. I love the stuff that he does. So there's the nugget. We're talking about an organization that John is running or a membership that John's running. And so we're dialoguing. I'm not selling to him. I'm not pitching, Michael. I'm just dialoguing, like as if we ran into each other at a coffee shop and started talking, or if we were at a conference and maybe John Asperian was a speaker at the conference and we walked out of it and I reached out my hand and said, "Hi, I'm Candice." And we started a conversation about what John had talked about at the event. That's what you want to, that's the mindset that you should have on LinkedIn. So, okay, if you want to close that, I can show you what I would do to send you a request. All right. So the first thing I'd look at is your headline. And I would get enough right there based on what you're written. And sorry, I have to move so close to the camera. I have really lousy vision. So I'm looking through the little
I can't wait. I can't
part of my glasses here. But so, you know, it's like we support you until you succeed. Thanks. Which is actually an interesting conversation starter right there. I might go, hey, you know, I noticed your headline. That's an interesting promise you're making. I'd be interested in hearing how you accomplish that. So that might be my connection request. But let's say you don't have such a good headline. Scroll down to your about section. Okay, so, I love that. You know, you talk about being fired. I could start one. I want to point out, I'm not spending very much time on this. And that's intentional. If I can start a conversation based on something really quickly, I'm going to do it and move on to the next prospect. So you've got this. I was fired for the first time in my life. It was humiliating, but a blessing in disguise. I would send you a message saying, hey, Michael, I saw in your about section that you got fired in 2016. I've been fired at least 3 times. And I think if you don't get fired at least once, you're not trying hard enough. You know, and send you something like that, you know. So so I could go with that. Or and I love the fact that you argued with the CEO and he fired you. So I would probably confess to you that I sent my CEO an email telling him to lead or get out of the way. That didn't work out well for me. I was really young.
Would you, when you send that, sorry for the interruption, but when you send that, do you then follow it up with a question, or would you just send that? Hey, you're trying hard enough.
Yeah. I would try to strike up a conversation. So in that case, if I say, I don't think you've got if you're not getting fired, you're not trying hard enough. And then you're mentioning that the board fired him. I might ask you what you did about that. Did you reach out to the CEO afterward? Did you have a relationship with him that allowed it? Or I might ask a question about what was the blessing? All I'm trying to do is get a conversation started.
Yep.
You know, now I might grab something about content marketing. So when I first started doing this LinkedIn outreach, I was selling content marketing services and consulting services. And so thanks, Alan. So I might use that as a way in the door, saying, wow, you were arguing for content marketing and the CEO fired you. What kind of strategy were you looking to implement in content marketing? Because if that's the consulting service I'm offering, I want to get a conversation started about content marketing. So, but I'm just looking for a nugget that will make you, and I'll ask you a question in it, and I probably will include the language of, I'd love to get acquainted with you, because I find that to be a pretty big game changer. But asking a question that causes them to want to respond and dialogue with you, a question that's pure curiosity on your side, that makes them feel that you really are interested in what they have to say, so that when they accept your connection request, they don't just accept, they reply.
Yeah. Okay, good. Fair enough. So you have a conversation going. I think this is where still you and I, both our methods are very similar. You pick up a nugget from the profile, and many people don't have much on their profile, but maybe they are posting something. You can always pick up something from their content, right? So it's either content or their profile. There's going to be something. Okay, so far we are very much aligned. Now, let's say they reply. What is, are you measuring your reply rate? Like, you start a conversation, how many reply? Do you know that figure?
I haven't measured it in the last 6 months, because I mean, it's a pain in the neck to measure this stuff. You have to pull out all of the data from LinkedIn and do a lot of math, and I'm not very good on Excel, so it takes me a while to get these numbers. But I would estimate that right now the reply rate on my connection request is roughly 80%. If they accept the connection request, which my connection acceptance rate is north of 65, but I don't know what the number is right now.
Okay. So 100 people you send the invite to, 65 accept, and then out of those, 80 reply to your first message. Sorry, 80%.
Yeah.
80%.
Roughly 80%.
That's like what, 12? It's like 50. 50 of them, then you get a conversation going with 50.
Right.
Got it. Perfect. Good. And now comes the real interesting point. And you've hinted at this in, I think, your post that you then shared with me and that I now know. But can you elaborate on this? Your way of getting them on the call is not by exploring whether they have a problem in your domain where you are active, where you work, but instead you get them on the phone for example, here, you would get me on the phone by asking me about my content marketing strategy back then in the day, or by talking about my firing, right? Or something like this. Could you elaborate? How would you do that?
Okay, so it's really important to keep in mind on LinkedIn that we need to slow down in order to speed up. We've been trained in every sales training program, is talking about how you want to keep, you want to be as efficient as possible and just get them to take the meeting, and don't spend too much time engaging, because you just want to cut out the fat and just find the meat, right? And so if they don't have a need, you don't want to talk to them. Well, people find that extremely off-putting on LinkedIn, number one. And number two, we don't know whether they have a need yet. So I want to get them in a conversation, because they may not recognize they have a need that I'm going to be able to find in conversation with them, that I won't find with a more direct sales pitch. And I'm going to put them off. So then I won't be able to have a conversation with them at all if I put them off at the very early stages of this. So, and I've looked at a lot of best practices on LinkedIn, and most people are saying just pitch them and see who's interested. But you don't get the numbers I'm getting by doing that. You really annoy people.
That's correct, but there is a middle ground here, and so I wonder if you would just quickly indulge me here. There is, of course, the extreme of pitch slapping, right? So you connect, they respond, and boom, you send them a pitch with a link, book my Calendly, and so on. Okay, so that is the one extreme. Then there is the other extreme of the virtual coffee takers, right? The people who just want to connect with everyone, and everybody who they meet, they just want to have a meeting. Personally, I really dislike that, but it's just whatever. It's fine. If the numbers are there, then I perfectly understand. I have actually, because I was open to it, and I did take at least in my overall LinkedIn career, so to speak, I've taken at least 10 virtual coffees. None of them have resulted in anything business-wise, right? And neither were they sources of referrals or friendships or anything like that. There was never anything that was kind of called virtual coffee. So that's, from my end, this is like the other extreme, the virtual coffees. And then there is the middle ground where you do build rapport. You do talk about, you would talk about the firing and so on. You talk about what was your content marketing strategy back then. But then you would guide the conversation towards, hey, Michael, so how do you actually win clients on LinkedIn? What's your method? And then you, through probing and exploring, you would figure out that I'm actually doing badly, which I'm not, but if I were, then I would do, I'm doing badly. And then you would say, well, this is maybe something I might be able to help you with. How about we get on a call? I consider that the middle ground. So if you could comment on that, what do you think?
I think that middle ground is pretty close to what we're doing. And sometimes I do that because I don't have time in my calendar for taking a bunch of meetings, and I want them to just go check out my site. But if I'm selling a smaller ticket offering. And so if you're selling a higher ticket offering, I think that there's huge advantage in getting them on the phone before you start selling. Okay. So what I do is engage them in that conversation. So let's say we used the nugget of you got fired for proposing content marketing. Can you scroll down a little bit more on your profile into the jobs section? Okay, so you're the founder and CEO of Alpha Lead Academy now, and you're a writer with Forbes. And you were let's say I reached out to you in 2016 while you were still the commercial director at Teespring. Mm-hmm. Okay, so of course that's probably the job that you got fired from, because you said it was.
No, I didn't. I didn't list the one I was fired from.
Okay. So you've landed at Teespring as the commercial director, and you're growing revenue. So when I've taken this nugget of the content marketing, now I'm going to say, I noticed that you're the commercial director at Teespring. So my messages, I might say, I assume that you've won over the current CEO to run content marketing strategies, right? So, okay, so let's take it back. So I've asked you what you're, about this content marketing. Like, I noticed you got fired for a content marketing strategy. That really sucks. If you haven't been fired at least once, you're not trying, haha. And then, something like, I'd love to connect with you and hear more about your experience. So, or I might ask you a question about what specifically got you fired or something like that. So you reply, and maybe you gripe about that CEO. And so then I might say, I noticed that now you're at Teespring. It looks like you've managed to bounce into something where you are using content marketing. And then I might ask you something about your content marketing strategy, like what kinds of things are you ending up doing in content marketing that the previous guy wouldn't let you do? So I'm continuing the conversation along that same nugget, and I want to sell you content marketing consulting services. So I'm also aligned with what I have to offer, but I'm not bringing that up right now. Now you'll see that from my profile and my headline, but I'm not going to bring that up and try to pitch you right there. I'm just going to try to get you involved in dialogue. So you might respond with something brief. One of the things that I've noticed is that you have to be really careful about composing those questions and make it something like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I would be careful to compose something that would be very easy for you to answer in 1 minute or less.
Yeah.
Because you're probably rushing off to a meeting when you see my message. If my question is asking you something complicated, you may want to answer me, but you got to get to this meeting. And so then when you come back to LinkedIn, you've completely forgotten about our dialogue because you had some high pressure thing that came up and you've had 3 phone calls and a bunch of other messages have come in on LinkedIn. So now my message is pushed down. If you don't use LinkedIn consistently, you don't know how to mark up messages unread to go back to it, and you don't know how to find unread messages. So I've gotten buried and you've forgotten about me. So I want to try to make it as quick and easy as possible for you to reply so that we can engage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. But okay, so now you're talking to me, you're linking it up to my new role. And then what? Then how do you then transition to offering me a call?
You're going to say something in that response to me that's going to be an interesting trigger. All right. So maybe, well, okay, let's say I ask you that question. So what kind of strategies are you employing today? That's too long. But give me a quick reply there and I'll grab that and ask you for a meeting.
Yeah. So I would say something like, well, we are mainly offering training videos for new sellers on our platforms, and we just offer that completely for free. That's our content marketing strategy.
Oh man. Okay. So that's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing because I've heard that kind of marketing is super effective. Would you be interested in jumping on a call and just chatting?
Okay, good. And this type of meeting offer then results in what was the number? So those are meeting invites, a 57% booking acceptance rate.
Yep.
You ask these 188 of those questions and 108 respond positively and book a call.
Okay, so let me back up. So I just asked you, would you be interested in getting acquainted and chatting about that? I might use, would you be interested in getting acquainted over a virtual coffee break or something like that to keep it short, to keep it contained, and to keep it about you and what you're interested in, not about me, not what I have to sell. So then,
how long is that meeting? How long do you usually schedule it for?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay.
So then I don't send you, and this is a really, really important detail here. I do not say, would you be interested in getting acquainted? Here's a link to my calendar. Or would you be interested in getting acquainted? Are you available Thursday or Friday? Because what happens there is the minute I do that, instead of having a conversation, I start pushing, I start selling, and your instinct is to run away. Even if you want to have a meeting with me, it's off-putting to get that pressure. It's like, whoa, I'm not there yet. So all I do is say, would you be interested in getting acquainted over that virtual coffee break? And then I stop. And you say yes. Usually I get an answer that's one word. Some people will say yes, and they'll send me their phone number. Some people will say, yes, I'm available Thursday or Friday. What works for you? But I don't offer a time or a link until I get the yes. Then I have like a text expander that I press like #CAL and it says, here's a link to my calendar. Would you like to pick a time that's convenient for you? And the Calendly link. And then they book their appointment. So when they've taken action to book, the no-show rate's very low because they're not gonna take that meeting if they don't want to.
Yeah. I'm even more cautious than that. I always ask for permission. Once they say yes, I then give a few options that are close, that I have availability. And then I say, if none of that works, would it be okay to send my scheduling link? Because some people, for whichever reason, I find 10-20% of people are just allergic to Calendly. And so I don't want to piss them off. And that's why I just always ask for permission to send a Calendly link. Most people say sure, but then some people just pick one of those slots that I proposed. So
yeah, I think that's brilliant. And if it works for you, great. For me, I don't like to go play appointment ping pong because a lot of times, because other people have my Calendly link, a lot of times those, unless I block those slots that I've just offered, then somebody else grabs it, and we end up in this back and forth that I find aggravating. And so I don't do it, but it's for me, my own personal community, not for other people.
Okay, very, very interesting. So you book the meeting, and the meeting is now under the auspices of, it's just getting to know each other, getting acquainted.
Mm-hmm.
So now you run the call, and so how do you then run the call? At which point, let's say with me, you talk about my firing, you talk about the content marketing that I do at Teespring, assuming that I'm still there, and so on. At what point in the call do you now, start inquiring or pitching, or what's the transition there?
This is where it gets really shocking. All right, so I'm going to do a shout out for Ari Galper, who is a coach that I learned this from. He's a phenomenal sales coach. So you can check out his stuff, Unlock the Sales Game, if you want to Google him. But one of the things that I've started doing, because he taught me this, is I open the conversation with, I'm so glad to meet you, Michael. I'm very excited to talk about content marketing. But before we get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and your current situation and what kind of challenges you're facing?
Mm-hmm.
We're getting introduced because we've just meeting each other. I don't make it about me. Now, it's really, really crucial that you have your profile headline and your profile about section and the whole profile really dialed in, because what I find is that the majority, I'm going to guess at probably 80% of those conversations, they start telling me about their LinkedIn challenges. So I didn't even have to start the conversation about sales. I just asked them about themselves and their situation. And because they know what I do, they've looked at my profile before they accepted my connection request, most likely. They definitely looked at my headline. And probably before they take the meeting, they're going to go look at my profile. So by the time they take the meeting, they already know I want to talk about LinkedIn. I don't have to bring it up at all. They do.
Mm-hmm. Good. And so from then,
right?
it's a very, okay. It does sound to me like a little bit, it's a tiny bit bait and switch, but I'm just using extreme words here. Don't take offense with that.
Does, I mean, honestly, it feels a little bait and switchy.
Yeah.
To me, but what they feel is very different than what I feel like I'm doing, because they feel like I'm making the call about them and their situation. And I am genuinely, and this is important, I am genuinely interested in this person.
Of course.
I love people. I'm genuinely interested in learning about them. So I'm asking that question very genuinely. Tell me about yourself. Give me a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing and what kind of issues you're running into.
Mm-hmm.
They could talk about, I have issues with my commute to work because it sucks, but they don't talk about that because they've looked at my profile. And it's human nature to talk about it, to go in a direction. Now we can go back and talk about content marketing all day, which is probably what, I mean, if I started a conversation with you about content marketing, my profile talks about content marketing, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's all linked together. It's a strategy, and it's not just about the connection request you sent. Everything has to come together, which is why with the 90-day accelerator, I can't teach this in a half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now this has fallen in place for me. I think the one thing to overcome a certain is this start of the conversation where it's sort of, the meeting was booked under the auspices of talking about my getting fired and a bit of chit chat about content marketing and you kind of being interested in what I do now. But then you start the conversation via, as in like saying, okay, so tell me about your challenges.
I didn't say that. I said, tell me about your background and your situation today and what kind of issues you run into or challenges you're running into, but I'm linking it together. I'm not just asking you about your challenges. Now, I'm still in my mind, I know, and I have a plan to ask you about getting fired. I'm still going to keep that in the conversation, but I'm not going to force the conversation there if you want to talk about something else. It's kind of like, when you get together for coffee with somebody and the plan is to talk about A, but the person comes there and the conversation goes off track to B. Do you drag them back to A, or do you let the conversation go where it wants to go?
Of course, yeah. You let it go organically.
Right. I booked the conversation to get to know you.
Yeah.
And yes, I do want to hear about your firing, but I'm not going to force you back there if it doesn't naturally go there.
Awesome.
It's not having a conversation. It's never about a pitch. And I don't pitch on those calls. If I find a need, we usually run through the half hour it goes pretty rapidly because they're talking a lot. And I'm asking little questions kind of to guide the conversation, but I'm not forcing the conversation in any direction. And then if I find a need, then I will ask them if they would like to have a follow-up conversation talking about that.
Exactly. And then you can stay true to, this call was just getting to know each other. I'm not pitching you anything, but hey, I realize that you have a problem that I might have a solution for. So how about we schedule a follow-on call and I can tell you a little bit about more of what we do. Yeah.
And I mean, I get even people that don't have a need for LinkedIn and go away, like not in, they're not one of the 50% that turn into qualified opportunities. They thank me for the call. And we talk about in sales, always sending in a message, following up with the prospect to thank them and give a couple of follow-ups. I get emails from the people that I meet with all the time, thanking me for the call.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're doing it right if people aren't thanking you for the call. They should feel like you want them to walk away from that call feeling like, wow, that was really time well spent. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad I carved that 30 minutes out of my schedule.
Do you even advise and consult on the call? Do you give them suggestions and tips and so on?
A lot of times questions about LinkedIn come up.
And you just advise them then and there.
I'll give them little tips. I try not to do much free consulting. The temptation is always there, but so I'll give them one or two tips about what I think might work. If they ask me about their profile or something like that, I'll take a look at it with them live and give them a couple of tips about it. But I'm not going to give away a lot because, that's how I get paid. And I'll be honest with them. It's like, I would love to help you, but I have a hard time making a living when I keep giving away free consulting. And they're like, yes, I totally understand that. They're always very understanding about the fact that I don't want to give away my services.
Yeah. Excellent. So then, given that you have 88 calls, then out of those, 55 effectively come to, this is then the ratio between the short call and the long call then, right? Yep. Or the 30-minute and the follow-on call. So this is then 55 qualified opportunities equals 55 long calls booked and or held, right?
So again, these were the numbers from my accelerator, and each of them made their own decisions about what constituted a qualified opportunity in the pipeline. But those 55, it meant that there was enough of a need that identified during that introductory call that it landed in their pipeline, and they were tracking it as a qualified deal in their pipeline.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Now I see how those numbers come together. So for me, the biggest insights were that you book the call on the premise of, hey, that's really interesting. How about you just let's get on a call just to get acquainted and to meet and to talk. So that is, you don't dig into their particular problems. You show interest about what they do, and you simply want to hear more about that. You don't necessarily, would you use the word virtual coffee?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, you do use it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just allergic to the term. And whenever somebody comes to me, No, go away. But okay,
well,
great.
remember that most of those people asking for the virtual coffee, they're asking for it in the connection request, or they're asking for it in the first DM. And
Exactly.
that's just as off-putting as sending your Calendly link. I mean, I get people that send me a connection request, maybe it's a blank connection request or some vague connection request, and I accept it. And then they send me a DM trying to book a meeting with me. They don't know anything about me. I don't know anything about them. And so it's like, no, I don't want that.
Exactly.
It's when you get a conversation engaged and we're both enjoying it. Now, it doesn't take very many messages. Like in my courses, I show all kinds of examples of dialogues that turn into meetings with me and with some of my trainees. And it's usually like a sequence of 3 or 4 DM back and forth. And it might take a half an hour of elapsed time before you get the meeting booked. But it's sometimes it's a longer dialogue. I mean, I do have examples where I dialogue back and forth on LinkedIn with somebody for 6 months before we took a meeting.
Exactly. It all happens. Exactly. Great. So that to me is the number one insight. The fact that you book the meeting over something that you just are curious, get acquainted.
The nugget.
The nugget. Exactly. The difference to what I do is I do explore whether they have a need that I might be able to help them with, and then I offer them the call.
So try taking that away. Try taking that step out and see if you get more opportunities as a result.
Yeah, that's a good one. The second thing is then on the call, you, instead of just letting it be a free-flowing, hey, getting to know each other, you take the reins in your hand and you ask this question of, hey, let's talk about your background, your current situation, and any challenges. And this then gets the conversation going in the right direction.
And that approach is new for me. I just started doing that in February. Before that, I would, I was often starting conversations about trends, and I would bring up the trend and take a couple minutes to tell them what kind of things I've been hearing, and then just get that, and then have some open-ended questions to ask them about their experience with that trend. But the trends that we're talking about tend to be the things that are relevant. So like you've mentioned training in your messaging to me. And so then I might have back then I might have, brought up, I've heard from 3 other people that providing free training webinars has brought in a pretty good return rate on lead conversion. How is that going for you? And I might ask a question around that and get the conversation started. So you can do both. I'm just finding that new question that I'm introducing speeds up my conversion from a conversation to opportunity.
That asking the trend question or that question about background, situation, and challenges accelerates.
Background, situation, and challenges speeds up the results that I'm getting. I'll get there the other way, but it might take another conversation before I get there. Starting with the background and challenges, I'm going to get there faster with them.
Okay. Does it happen to you that when you offer the call, where you just, under the auspices of getting acquainted, that people tell you, sure, but I'm not in the market for whatever you're selling? Does that happen?
Yeah.
It happens regularly?
Half the time.
Half the time. Oh, interesting. And then you still have the conversation, and then they happen to still be in the market.
Oh, you mean in the DM, they tell me that they're not in the market?
Yeah.
So usually in the DM conversation, like for example, I'm in a DM conversation right now on LinkedIn with a guy who found me because he heard a podcast interview I did with Moeed Amin last week. And in his case, he's selling like heavy equipment to heavy equipment operators. And he's saying to me in the chat that they don't really get many leads from LinkedIn. He's trying, but he's not finding it effective, and cold calling is more effective for him. And I was actually debating on whether or not to dig deeper into dialogue with him, but he's kind of telling me in the DMs, like, yeah, I'm not going to really try with LinkedIn. It's not working. Now I can try engaging him and try changing his mind, or and book a meeting. I probably could get a meeting with this guy to talk about it, but I don't know that it's really worth my time to do that because, one, honestly, his audience probably isn't on LinkedIn very actively. Right. And two, I don't know that I'm going to change his mind. And so I don't know that it's worth my time to try. So in those cases, I'm not even going to invite him to a meeting because his mind's made up, and frankly, he's probably right. Other people, you know, I might engage them in the meeting. When they've said no, they still want to talk to me, and we'll talk back and forth. And I've had people make a decision to buy my course after a meeting like that. So it really, you have to just, there's no one answer to that. It's based on the conversation, based on the person, how important that person is in terms of your own strategy. If they're one of the key accounts you need to go after, then you take the meeting.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And sometimes you need to have lots of meetings before you're going to get a key account in. Of course.
Absolutely, especially when it's a multi-5 or 6-figure deal, obviously.
Right,
you
right.
cannot close that on the first call. Candice, this was really enlightening. Thank you so much. Fascinating.
Thank you.
Some very good comments in the comment section as well. So Hatice recently posted this. I think, unless you have anything else to share, I think we can wrap it up here. Everybody should go and check out Candice's profile. There's still a couple of spots available for the training starting next week. So I have no doubt that if you watch this is some fascinating stuff, and you can learn a lot from Candice. So thank you so much. Any final words? Any final words from you?
That training in the 90-day accelerator is live. You get lots of personal coaching from me in a very small cohort to learn this stuff. So by the time you come out of that accelerator, you'll have deals in the pipeline. I don't have anybody that has gone through the accelerator that didn't have deals in the pipeline when they left it. So it's, you know, that's a pretty assured thing. There's also an online course that you can take, Prospecting Mastery, that is an all on demand thing. So reach out to me, send me a connection request on LinkedIn if you want to talk. I'm going to engage with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone, you will do it. Candice, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.